Well, good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be with you again for another one of our morning prayer times together. Today is the 7th of September. It's a Monday morning. Quite a lot of kids have gone back to school today, last week, and through this week. So it's going to be a really interesting week out there as we see all of that kind of taking place and people going to uni and college and all of that starting to happen again. Alongside the fact that the infection rate is starting to rise again, so there's lots of questions and anxiety out there and so on and so forth. So yeah, just as we begin this week, do be thinking about those who are starting back in education again, and of course all the teaching staff and everyone there involved. For ourselves, for our morning prayer, we're still working our way through Mark's Gospel, but like I've said before, we're getting really towards this crunchy bit now, really towards the gritty bit at the end of the story of Jesus' life and his ministry. So what's happened in the build up to where we are today is Jesus has been betrayed. Judas has sold him out. Jesus has been arrested. He's then been taken. After being arrested, he's been dragged off to the Jewish High Court. It's called the Sanhedrin. It's the kind of absolute authority in Jewish culture and the Jewish faith. And there he's been questioned. And there's been loads of testimony said against him, lots of it false, lots of it made up, and none of it making any sense. And Jesus didn't respond to any of it, didn't say a word. And then the high priest, the big guy, the high priest says, "Are you not going to say anything? Are you not going to defend yourself? Are you the Son of God?" Is the question that he basically asked Jesus. Are you the Son of God? And Jesus responds by saying, "I am." And so, in that moment, Jesus' fate is sealed. He has now committed ultimate blasphemy, basically saying he is God's son, he is God on earth. That's a huge claim, and one that isn't made lightly, but also brings with it at that time a huge penalty, the penalty being death. So he's been there, and it's a kind of end now. He's on his way to head towards Pilate, who is the Roman leader in the area. Whilst that's happening, whilst Jesus has been taken from the Jewish High Court over to Pilate to be questioned, to question further, one of Jesus' followers, Peter, has actually followed Jesus to the temple courts, but actually he stayed at a big distance. And Peter's said 3 times that he doesn't know who Jesus is. He's been questioned 3 times. Don't you know him? Aren't you one of his followers? And Peter has said, "No, I have no idea who this man is." Now, Jesus had predicted this. He had said to Peter and the rest of his followers, when it comes to the crunch, you are going to fall away. You're going to even deny knowing who I am. And Peter had said, "No, I'd never do that. I'd follow you to death." But now when it really comes to it, in the moment where Jesus is arrested and it's really starting to get bad, Peter says, "I have no idea who this man is. I don't know. I'm not anything to do with him." And now we pick up the story after that's happened, after Jesus has been arrested, after he's been condemned to death, and after his closest followers have denied even knowing him. We pick it up now as Jesus is now brought before Pilate, the Roman leader. Very early in the morning, the chief priests with the elders, the teachers of the law, and the whole Sanhedrin, the Jewish High Court, reached a decision. They bound Jesus, led him away, and turned him over to Pilate. Pilate being the head Roman. "Are you the king of the Jews?" asked Pilate. "Yes, it is as you say," Jesus replied. The chief priests accused him of many things. So again Pilate asked him, "Aren't you going to answer? See how many things they're accusing you of." But Jesus made no reply, and Pilate was amazed. Now, it was the custom at the feast, still the Passover feast, we've talked about that before, to release a prisoner when the people requested. So there was prisoners, and at the feast, it was tradition that one could be released, and that one could be chosen by the crowd. A man called Barabbas was in prison, and he had committed murder. The crowd came up and asked Pilate to do for them what he usually did. "Do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews?" said Pilate, knowing it was out of envy that the chief priests had handed Jesus over to him. But the chief priest stirred up the crowd to have Pilate release Barabbas instead. "What shall I do then with the one you call the king of the Jews?" Pilate asked. "Crucify him," they all shouted. "Why?" Pilate said. "What crime has he committed?" But they shouted all the louder, "Crucify him." And now, wanting to pacify and satisfy the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them. He had Jesus flogged, and handed him over to be crucified. Now, this is getting really, really bad now. But here again, we're seeing so many human traits starting to come in. So Jesus is brought before Pilate with the chief priests and everybody there, and they're saying, oh, this man is terrible. He's blasphemed against us, and you need to have him crucified. And Jesus again doesn't say anything. And Pilate again asks a similar question that the chief priest asked before. Are you the king of the Jews? Are you the chosen one? Are you the one that are you this very special, important person? And again, Jesus has one line answer. Yes. Yes, I am. And that's it. And from that moment on, again, his fate is sealed. Or is it? You see, Pilate's worked out what's going on here. He's not a daft man. He can see what game is being played by the Jewish elders, by those in authority. They are throwing accusations at Jesus, but Pilate can see, and he can see this in the text. It says he could see that it was out of envy that they were accusing him. It was because they were scared and jealous of the power and authority that Jesus had that they wanted to get rid of him. And Pilate could see that. Pilate was a politician. He was a head Roman. He knew how games like this were played. If you see someone else who's a threat, you get rid of them. If there's someone who's threatening your position, your status, you get them out the way. And he can see that game being played now with the Jewish authorities. So Pilate has a choice. He knows the reality here. He knows that Jesus actually has committed no crime for which he should die. And so he says, well, I tell you what, usually at this time of year, we release one prisoner to you. So I've got Barabbas over here. Now, Barabbas had been accurately kind of accused and found guilty of murder. So Barabbas is here, and I've got Jesus, who says he's the king of the Jews. I can't find anything to accuse him of, so who do you want me to release to you? Now, what happens is the chief priests stir up the crowd and say Barabbas. And Pilate goes, why? There's nothing happened to this. This is weird. What's going on? But they say all the more, release Barabbas. So Barabbas is released. And again, Pilate, he kind of puts responsibility away from himself and on the crowd. So what do you want me to do with Jesus, he says. The crowd, now properly stirred up, say, crucify him. Crucify him. And in the end, just to keep the crowd happy, that's exactly what Pilate does. Now here we see a lot of things playing on and a lot of things happening. And maybe part of us can look at it and go, well, that seems a bit weird that the crowd would shout that, or the crowd would get whipped up in this way, or that Pilate would do that. And yet we see this happen all the time in our present day. We see people trying to appease crowds that they want to win the affection of. We see this in politics, we see it in church, we see it everywhere. I want you to be on my side, so I will say and do what I think you want me to make sure that you are following me. We see this often in election campaigns, where promises are made, where people go, well, we need to win the vote of this particular part of society, so we will come out strong against something. We'll talk about, I don't know, for instance, immigration. We'll make that our big thing, because we know that part of society, that's a big issue for them. We want to win them over, so that's what we'll go for. And we see that happen time and time again. We also see people swept up with crowds doing things that otherwise they might not normally do if they were on their own. That's not ridiculous to think about that. So often what we see is people who kind of go along with the crowd, even in adulthood, bullying somebody else, saying things against someone else because they know it's wrong, but they want to go along with the crowd. And what's happening with Jesus is actually what happens in our society, day in and day out. Crowds just following each other, not want to stand against each other and shouting against somebody who's a scapegoat. We're going to bring you down. And people in authority, people in responsibility, wanting to appease the crowd. They know that it's wrong. They don't really even agree with it, but they want to stay in that position of power and authority, so they will do whatever that takes. And if that means, well, I will agree with you. Okay, no worries. If that's what you want, that's what I'll say. Yes, this man must go. Then that's what happens. In this story of Pilate, we see the entire kind of playing out of what happens in human society. And we're not kind of innocent of this ourselves. And what we need to do is we need to see what God's saying to us in this. We find ourselves swept up with the crowd not wanting to stand out. We find ourselves wanting to maintain a particular status, and we will do whatever it takes to maintain that, even if we know that what we're doing is wrong or what we're doing collectively is wrong. Well, we don't want to rock the boat. We will judge and have scapegoats in our lives, in our society, and we will attack them. We will go for them, and we will ask that they be brought down, even if we don't quite know what the full story is. We are phenomenally quick to judge. We are very quick to ask for retribution or justice in what form we see it right. The crowds at that time, they just went along with it. Oh, yeah, he said something terrible, crucify him. They had no kind of idea of what actually was happening or who he was. And we do the same thing day in and day out in our lives. There's a few things we need to learn from this. First of all, don't go along with the crowd. If you know something's wrong, take the courage and the bravery to speak up about it, even if it means that you're the next one put on the plinth. You're the next one about, wow, this person doesn't agree with us, so we need to bring them down. Secondly, we cannot abdicate responsibility. We can't just get rid of it. Pilate does that. He knows it's wrong, but he goes, well, it's over to you guys. Whatever you choose, I'll do that. It's not my fault. You chose it. That's not how this works. We can't just pass along our responsibility. We've all got responsibility. And if we see something wrong, our responsibility is not to wash our hands of it, but to go, no, that's wrong and I won't be part of this. I'll stand against it. None of that happens. Pilate is guilty, the Jewish leaders are guilty, the crowd is guilty of doing something which they actually all know is wrong. And the victim of all of this, well, that's this guy Jesus. One man brought down because nobody wanted to stand up and speak for him. There's a lot for us to learn in this. What we're going to do is we're going to say the Lord's Prayer together, and then we'll go about our day. So let's pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. All right, guys, wonderful to be with you today. It's great that you can catch up with this whenever you want, whether this is in the morning, through the day, through the week, or whenever. It's just fabulous that you can do this. We're coming very close to the end of Mark's Gospel now, so we're only going to have a few more sessions, but then there's something new coming along, which I'm quite excited about. So it's going to be good. So I'll let you know about that. We'll be here again on Wednesday and on Friday. But until then, stay safe and may God be with you. Take care.